Hello, and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Terri Haas is a carnivore and low carb, healthy fat content creator. Carnivore herself since 2016, she might have been one of the few who chose to eat this way simply because meat was always her favorite food. When she's not busy in her kitchen creating carnivore and low carbohydrate, healthy fat recipes, she volunteers her time in a migraine protocol group on Facebook. An admin since 2015, she developed a deep understanding of how food can be used as medicine and as a powerful healing modality, which led her to start her own health coaching business. With her experience in helping those in chronic pain, she empowers individuals with adverse health conditions to optimize their well being through dietary approaches. As a dedicated metabolic health coach, Terri's passion lies in guiding others towards vibrant health and wellness through nutrition strategies. Terri started in 2024 with a new venture. She became an author. Terri's Carnivore Treats Cookbook was released in January to kick off World Carnivore Month. Her sustainable, innovative, and tasty recipe creations are what really set her apart. Her focus is mainly on carnivore treat recipes with a bit of low carbohydrate, healthy fat recipes mixed in as well. Terri Haas, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Thank you so much, Casey. It's a pleasure to be here.
How does that statement sound? Terri Haas is an author. That is so cool.
That's actually not something I've wrapped my head around, but my mom tells it to everybody. My daughter's an author. My daughter's an author.
I would do the same thing. That's great.
I don't really think about it that way. It was something that just basically fell in my lap. I had been creating recipes for the migraine group for a number of years. And this group is really strong. It's got like 18,000 members. So I kind of had a captive audience with my recipes. Who doesn't want to have something kind of outside the typical box, right? And so I got a lot of feedback from them. And then they all started asking me, you should write a cookbook. And I thought, I'm not an author. That just sounds like a lot of work. And then sometime last year in the fall, I kind of thought, enough people had asked. I thought, well, maybe I could. And I looked at everything and I thought, well, I've got plenty of recipes and they're already written on my YouTube channel and on my social medias and whatnot. And so I found a publisher and whipped up 40 recipes and have a cookbook.
That's amazing. I love it. I just got done speaking with Courtney Luna not too long ago. She just came out with her own cookbook, Carnivore in the Kitchen. And it just occurs to
Yes.
me, like when I think back to when you first got into this, 2015, 2016, like the number of resources you would have had available to you would have been next to none. I mean, nobody was really talking about carnivore. There were people doing it, but you had to go hunting for them at the time. And now to know that we have multiple different cookbooks and authors and everybody approaching it
Yes.
slightly differently, it's so valuable that we have so many options and we can be so much more welcoming to more people who will then have all these amazing resources.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when I first started, I think chaffles were the thing, right? And I mean, you look back and chaffles seem so archaic now, although sometimes I still enjoy them. And it was really whenever the world shut down kind of during COVID. And I remember sitting down and I was in my bubble all by myself and I thought, I want a sandwich, but I do not want a chaffle. I'm not real hot on eggs and they taste very eggy to me. So I thought, there's got to be a bread recipe out there. There's got to be something. I mean, come on. So, and just like you said, I mean, I probably spent 3 days, click, click, deeper and darker and further on the web. And one day I came upon something, and it was a low carb, high fat soul bread recipe, and I was like, this is crazy. This is crazy. It's made with whey protein powder and a bunch of olive oil, and I just converted some of this stuff into all carnivore, and there you go. And from there I had success, and the next thing I made was successful, the next thing I made was successful. And I mean, I didn't have prior experience with this. I was not like a baker or a cook or a chef or anything. I was a stay-at-home mom. I cooked meals for my family, nothing extravagant, nothing too over the top. So with the early success, it just basically was like beginner's mind. I was like, oh wow, I'm kind of have a hack for this, like, okay, this is great. And so that kind of went on. There was failures eventually. And that made it a little more difficult. But yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. And what is really interesting I'm finding is that the recipes that I've got are very different from what are in the typical like exterior carnivore space. I think since I was, excuse me, in this little bubble of the migraine space, and I didn't have external chatter or really anything external at that point. And I went with the guide, excuse me, kind of the guidelines that we follow in the protocol. So that is a balance, a fine balance of potassium and sodium, and also certain macros that we meet. So we're limited in a degree, to a degree, on what we can use. I know a big thing that people use on the carnivore diet is pork rinds, but they're really high in sodium, and they can be difficult to balance with enough potassium in them. So pork rinds were kind of off the table for me as far as a recipe ingredient. That's why I don't use a lot of them in my recipes, strictly for that, mostly the sodium content. So a lot of mine are really heavy dairy. And I know that that's also not a big welcoming thing in the exterior carnivore space, which is was very surprising to me because it is something we use quite a bit of in the migraine protocol. We love dairy in that group.
Gotcha. Again, it just speaks to having so many different options for so many different people out there that, to
Mhm.
be able to select for a certain person based on their taste preferences or their health status, what they can tolerate, what they can't tolerate, I think is absolutely wonderful. One of my favorite
Mhm.
parts about a carnivore diet and having been carnivore now for 5.5 years is just like the simplicity. Like a meal can be a steak or some burger patties or some eggs, and that's kind of all that it is. And if you do that for
Mhm.
long enough, you really you have to remember that for other people, it's not that easy, or they're not starting out in the same spot, or they have families and they have children and they have other circumstances that I don't have to deal with having done this for as long as I have. I just want to tell everybody, I'll just keep it real simple and just eat steak. Well, it's not really that simple, and people like variety and they have to feed their kids. And so, again, I think it's so cool your work and how you're able to make that available to everybody.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, also doing it for this long of a time, I've had some different issues that have kind of popped up. And when I started this, like I said, I didn't go into this with any health issues. I basically kind of had healed them already. I had some gastritis and some other little things that were healed through low carb, high fat prior to moving to carnivore. It was literally, I mean, I literally heard you don't have to ever eat fruits and vegetables again in your life. And I'm like, I am in. And I went in. That was it. That's all I heard because I never really liked fruits and vegetables. And I also already knew that like pastas and breads and stuff, I didn't eat, I wasn't vegan, I wasn't vegetarian. Those meals did not make me feel good. I know now in hindsight, it was blood sugar issues. This is a hypoglycemic or, blood sugar roller coaster. So, there were some, so I didn't have any like health issues to address, but over the course of the last 9 years or so, I've had other issues come up where eating meat or carnivore foods or whatever has presented an issue for me. They just didn't seem palatable for whatever reason. I don't know why exactly. And that was also another impetus for me to create those recipes because I'm like, what am I going to eat? Because no beef, no chicken, no, none of that sounds good, but nothing else outside of the carnivore diet sounded good either. So I would, come up with the carnivore milkshake, which is whey protein powder, a little heavy whipping cream and milk, right? So it's a protein shake, but essentially, something in the carnivore realm. And then that just begot this, begot that. So I now know that I can make it through a meat aversion or whatever reason my body says I don't want meat today or for a day or three, and I can do that, and I can teach others how to do that too when they come into bump up against meat aversion or repetitive foods or that sort of thing. So it's given me a lot of key insights, the health issues that I've had over the last 9 years to help people go through the similar type things, even if it's not a health issue, just the boredom that can come from initially starting a carnivore diet.
Yeah, no, I love that. That meat aversion thing is real. You and I both share the experience of like, we kind of know like once you start with a certain food, you can almost eat that food every day,
Yep.
every single day. It sounds amazing. I see this with my wife too. She'll eat the exact same meal for days and weeks until it's like, nope, now it's this. And it's that
Yep.
food for like months. And then it's like, nope, now it's this. And I remember when I first started with carnivore, I was eating ribeye for every meal, doing mostly OMAD.
I
Yep,
did too.
I know, I know you've had this experience. And it's like one day, no. No, I can't.
Never again.
Never again. I know. It
Yep.
took years until that taste come back, and I'm currently back in a phase where I'm alternating between like ribeyes and New Yorks. And so I'm like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh no, there's going to be a day where this is not going to taste good. So eat a lot of it while it tastes really good. But that's a real thing, and you need to have other options.
Yes. I'm cracking up because so all of this, I went through all of that too. But again, like you said, I was kind of alone and you don't really know. And I will just go back to I've always, for the most part, listened to my body, at least since I was an adult, listened to my body intuitively. Dialed in because I've had some health things that have just made me dial in and go quiet and really listen. And so that was what really served me for my whole entire life. It was like, I don't like these fruits and vegetables. I don't like this. So I think I'm going to just go with what I like, and it's beef and it's cheese and it's high fat stuff. And if I die at 55 from a heart attack, then at least I've eaten good, right? And so, oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, so when I started that, I too, just with the ribeyes thing, right? It's like, this is what I want. I'm like, can I eat ribeyes like 3 times a day? And I thought, Terry, you've never doubted yourself. Go right ahead. So I did. That lasted for about a year. And then I segued up to, doggone it, filet mignon. It's like, no, you're supposed to go down to like ground beef, something cheaper. So I'm not joking. For probably 4 to 5 years, every day I had a filet mignon. It was not good on my budget at all. I finally named that meal. It's Gruyere cheese, sauteed in butter mushrooms, and a petite filet. And it's called Pierre. So now I sit down and I have a date for every meal. And I went off Pierre in January this year. So World Carnivore Month this year, I was completely meat averse the entire month. Now talk
Yeah.
about hard to like create content that's you want to kind of do meat because it's World Carnivore Month, because you got to sit there and do a protein shake. Like that's not carnivore. So anyway, yeah. So it's just a weird thing how your body makes you crave these weird foods. Now I've never been on a ground beef kick, and now I'm eating burgers every day.
Wow. Yeah.
Weirdest thing, but it's
Yeah.
also
Totally.
cheap and easy, so I'm thankful.
I love it. I hate it when my wife has a hankering for what are they? The scallops. And we cook them in the house, and I think it smells like a dying skunk lit on fire or something. Like it smells terrible. So luckily she's not on one of those. But yeah, it's funny how the body, like you said, will just naturally like want something. And as long as you're setting up your boundaries somewhere around carnivore, it's really easy
Mhm.
to kind of intuitively sense what's going to sound good to you that day, and in that way you can do intuitive eating.
Right.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
love that.
Let me ask you this question. I have a question for you. So, where are you with organs and stuff? Because I know, like, before carnivore, um, I would crave liver occasionally, a couple times a year, whatever, and I would eat it whenever I craved it. And when I started carnivore, I noticed I did crave it a little bit more, maybe a handful times more, not like significantly more. But then after like the first 18 months, I really haven't wanted it at all. And so that's just another thing that I'm curious about, because I know out, in the outside carnivore community, these organs are pushed quite a bit. And I know that people try to get them in, but I see that, a lot of people are averse to organs for good reason because we don't have them in our diet. So I'm just curious, like, where are you with organs?
That's a great question. I find that I almost never crave them. I can definitely relate to what you were mentioning. Like when I was starting, I definitely didn't have the taste for organ meat and liver in particular, but everybody's saying how nutrition dense it was. So I would freeze it into the little pills that people talked about, and I would swallow some in the morning. And
Mhm.
I think in the beginning I noticed a little bit of a bump in energy when I did that, and over time I
Mhm.
noticed less and less that I wanted them. I noticed less and less if I had them or not, any kind of difference. I've done liver supplements over the years, and I'll have a bottle and use it for a month, and it'll be gone, and then I won't even think about it for 6 months.
Oh.
So that's a really, really good question. I notice those same patterns though, with a lot of the people that I coach, and I know you and I have both coached a ton of people in the space over the
Mhm.
years. And I'm kind of in that same, I guess, headspace where some people might notice it a little bit in the beginning, but not so much later on. I think I heard you in an interview talk about like going out to eat at a Brazilian steakhouse or at a Korean hot pot that has lots of different options of different food that I know for me personally, I would never cook these foods. I wouldn't bring them into my house, but they're
Right.
there. Those seem to me to be good opportunities where you can get a little bit of organ meat. Like if I go to a Brazilian steakhouse, I lived in Brazil and got a really good taste for coração, the chicken hearts,
Mm.
which are really, really good. So I'll eat like 20 of
Yes.
those and I'll be set on organs for a while. I won't even think about it. So it sounds like
Mhm.
you kind of had that same bit of experience.
Yeah, yeah, seems, yeah, it's kind of nice to know that, because you kind of think, even though I've been doing this 9 years, and I mean, all my health markers are great, my labs are great, and all that kind of stuff, you're like, still, what is it about me that makes me not crave that, or make me not want the organs? And so it's just something I kind of like to ask people.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And it's interesting too. Like I remember somebody making this point of like everybody in the carnivore world is all worked up about the organ meats, but nobody like eating a normal diet is eating organ meats, and their
Mhm.
health isn't very good, but they're not like dying over from not eating them.
That's
So
true. That's a good point.
I had never thought about it that way, and when it was put that way, I was like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. So
Yeah, that does make sense.
yeah.
And true,
Um,
another one thing too that I always would that I think of too is, if you look at the size of an animal, the organs are very small compared to the muscle meat. So it makes sense that we wouldn't be eating organs frequently because there's just not a large portion of the animal that's organ meat.
Yeah, really good point. I love that. Yeah, that's a great point. Going back to your personal story, you said you didn't have many health things, although I really wanted to talk to you about migraines in particular. But like through your childhood, do you remember ever wanting things like fruits and vegetables? And if not, like, did that cause any like consternation with your parents at the dinner table when you were growing up?
So, okay, so I'm 58. And so that put me growing up kind of before the curve of like the push for more. Like, I remember going to college and coming back from college and visiting, and my mom having a bowl of, like, actually a bowl of tomatoes out, like marinating in olive oil and basil, or whatever. And she had it sitting on the counter as I came from school. And of course, I'm sure I must have seen like, what's for dinner or whatever. And she's like, oh, we're having this. And I looked at this bowl of tomatoes and I'm like, well, where's the meat? And she's like, we're not having meat. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, I went to college and what? So, but then she did have a backup meal. And I remember it was a decent meal. I don't, it wasn't bad or anything. But I'm trying to think of like, so my mom cooked like pot roast dinners with, potatoes and green beans and stuff like that, kind of like the old school kind of cooking, I suppose. And so there wasn't a whole lot of variety of different fruits and vegetables because they just weren't around back then in the 60s and 70s and 80s and stuff. I have pictures of me eating a watermelon when I was young. That's good stuff. But like, and I like potatoes, but no sweet potatoes, no squashes. I like peas. I like asparagus, but really, and it wasn't a problem. I mean, I ate my meat and potatoes, and I mean, I was a healthy child. I wasn't scrawny or frail, and I wasn't overweight or anything like that. So it didn't present a problem growing up with my family.
Gotcha. Okay. And then as you're transitioning into your adult life, it's coinciding with this war against fat and especially saturated fat, and the low fat movement is on the rise, and everybody's eating like tons of grains and lots of bread. Like, how did you
Right.
get caught up in all of that as well, or no?
Oh, of course. Yeah. So when I say, I mean, so really I was beef heavy and fat heavy, animal fat heavy, but I mean, if you came to our house, it would basically be the older style of standard American diet. I had 5 boxes, 6, 7 boxes of cereal, 4 boxes of chips, the treats and everything. I had kids, and so I put the package stuff. And so yeah, there was that. And I had candy every day. We had a candy drawer. I grew up with a candy drawer. So, and also what's really interesting, so after the birth of my second child, I put on a bunch of weight. I was about 180 pounds. I was very, very depressed. As a matter of fact, in that first year, I became suicidally depressed.
Oh, wow.
And yes, I was actually planning my suicide and very close to performing that. And I was sad all the time with my mom. I had two little babies at home. I talked to my mom daily, several times daily. I probably cried daily. And I just remember saying, I'm fat. I don't like this. I remember yelling at my kids because I was miserable. And one day, like I said, I was planning that. And something inside of me, when I was talking to my mom, she was in the middle of a sentence and I just blurted out, Mom, I want to kill myself. And something inside of me just blurted that out. And I think that made me take accountability. The fact that I voiced it out loud was so scary, but it was so helpful because in the lucid times, I did not want to leave this planet. I had two little babies, and I kept thinking they're going to think that it was because of them that you did this. And it had nothing to do with them. It was just, I know now it was my diet. I mean, that's, a situational depression, but still, I know it could be due to diet, maybe a progesterone overload. So through all of that, I joined Weight Watchers and I lost 60 pounds in about 4 months. And that was low fat, no fat, fat free, chicken breast, all that kind of stuff. And finally, I got out of that and I just said, I can't sustain this. This is crap eating. I cannot do this. And so when I left Weight Watchers, I was like 1 pound away from my goal weight. And you stay there, and you're working for maintenance. It kind of like was self-sabotaging. And I most likely it was because I was eating low fat. I stopped that, started back with my high fat right away, and I dropped another 40 pounds sorry about that, in the next like 2 or 3 months. And I've been this same weight ever since. And that's been 30, almost 32 years ago.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
What made you decide to go back to high fat at the time? I mean, that would have been so counterintuitive.
You know what? Okay, so this was in 1991 or 92, maybe one of the two. And I was a big Oprah fan, and Oprah had a show on, and it was the French diet. And they had a bunch of French people on, and the French people were saying that they don't eat low fat. Are you kidding me? That's disgusting. They eat full fat and they take as many bites as they want until they're satiated. And I thought, duh. So that's what I did. I thought, you know what? If I gain the weight back, I'll go back to low fat. And I have not gained 1 pound back. In
That's
fact,
great.
I've lost more weight.
But you're going to die. What about a heart attack? Like, how
I know.
difficult was that to like wrap your head around?
I mean, like I would be the woman at lunch with the girl at lunch that would have the double cheeseburger with bacon and avocado, and take off the top bun, take off the lettuce, take off the tomato, eat my fries because that's my vegetable, and then eat the bottom bun because it needed to hold something, right? And I would just look at everybody and go, "I'm gonna die at 55, so you guys will be celebrating." You know what I mean? Like, but I'm not gonna eat a salad because it tastes disgusting, and I'm
That's
not gonna waste my money on it.
That's amazing. Oh my goodness, that's amazing. So even back in the 90s, if you would have been at a low carb conference, which there wasn't one, but like we're just at Hack Your Health, and every conference it's like Sean Baker gets up and makes everybody say like, if we're wrong about this, you die of a heart attack. Would you change your eating? And every hand it stays up the whole time. You would have been like that back in the 90s.
Yes,
That's
I'm doing
amazing.
it. I'm doing it now.
That's amazing. And wow, okay, so you didn't think you'd live till 55. You're 58 now, which you look amazing for 58. So congratulations. You've at least pushed through an extra 3 years. So that's good. I
Right.
have a hunch it might continue a little bit longer, but we'll see.
And I've got
That's
longevity in my family. My grandparents lived till late 80s, early 90s too. So
great. That's awesome. You got a long ways to go. That's great.
yeah.
Okay, so how about the migraines? When was that something that you started to notice?
The migraines started after the birth of my third child when I was about 28, 29. I have migraine genetics in my family, which is the only way you can get get migraines is if you have the genetics. And and it can happen through a traumatic event, epigenetics, really anything can happen to turn on your genes. And so I'm assuming it must have been the birth of my third child and having three kids or whatever, even though I was actually in a really good place than I thought. And so, yeah, they started. Typically, I got one hellacious headache that first year. I was just like, what is this? And you get through it and you're like, okay, I'm done with that. And then, like, the next year was two, the next year was three, and you're like, okay, wow, do I have a brain tumor? What's going on? And then they came regularly every month or whatever. And I suffered with those for over 20 years. I found out my dad had them. Just go to a dark room, suffer. Finally, after about 20 years, I was chronic for about 4 months. And I was in a women's migraine support group that was literally just like Weight Watchers, just Whine, 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 complain, complain, complain. What do I do if I'm going to go on vacation? And so it's like, and then one day, another person that was in there that was kind of like a cheerleader like me also said that she found this other group. And she says, this is really strange. She's approaching it really strange. Never heard of this. And I was like, well, let me go, I'll go check it out. So I bought the book, I downloaded it on my Kindle. It was like 60, 70 pages, just this woman's journey, basically, of how she kind of, her migraines and how she kind of discovered something that's helped her. So I joined her group, and this was June 23rd, 2015. I read the book the day before. And up until that point, I literally, salt was a demon. The only thing I salted was my fries. I never used salt in my cooking. And who's a good girl that goes to the gym and drinks her gallon of water every day? Me.
Yeah.
So who's the fool that's drinking twice as much water as her body needs and never using salt? So she never has electrolyte in her body? Me. So that next day I halved my water and started adding salt to my diet, and I've not had a migraine since.
That's incredible.
So yeah, it is remarkable. Not everybody has that same type of success. And I think really what set me up was the fact that I did continue with my high fat and I was more beef heavy. Gosh, I'm so sorry. The protocol diet was very similar to how I was already eating. At that time, it was Ezekiel bread was protocol friendly and potatoes were protocol friendly and stuff. And I'm like, hey, this is easy. So it wasn't really hard for me to add salt to my diet and reduce my drinking, water. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, I'm assuming based on everything you're describing, you're talking about the work of Dr. Angela Stanton.
Dr. Angela Stanton. Yes, sir. Yes.
She
My
is an
mentor.
angel. I love her. I love her.
Yes.
She's amazing.
Yes. I feel I am the most luckiest person in the world. About maybe 8 or 9 months after joining the group, and I had taken all my kind of cheerleader support, attitude or whatever. I got a PM from one of the other admins, and she says, "Hey, we really appreciate your support in the group, and you've had great success, and you seem to have a handle on this, and we would love to know if you would like to be an admin." And I was just like, what? This was way back when. Back then I knew Angela was a gem, but now she's just like, I can't believe the luck that I have to work with this woman. I'm an admin in the group now since 2016. Every day I learn something new from her every day, personally, in the group. It's just fascinating. I just feel like I have this total insider fast track to like everything health and nutrition, working with her.
That's amazing. Oh, I love that. It's so cool that you're already eating something very similar to what she recommended. So the nutrition piece was probably a very easy shift for you, is just being more conscious about the salt. Okay, so
Exactly.
this is really interesting. You'd be a great person to ask because you coach so many people on this. Angela says 100% without exception. Usually it's about the day before you have a migraine. There is a warning sign. There is a prodrome, something to indicate that this is going to happen. I tell that to my people who get migraines, and 100% of them say, nope, I'm the exception. Nothing happens for me. There's nothing I can do. It's the funniest thing. Like, I'm trying to help people like with this awful, migraine, and they insist that everything is the same. It comes out of nowhere. I've had a client describe to me like it's just a shovel that whacks them in the head and there was no warning whatsoever. What do you think about that?
Yeah. And you know what? That I can see where that can happen, because so one of the best, and I might even have it right now because I can kind of feel it. And it happens. So we have more anatomically different brains. We have more neurotransmitters than people without migraine brains. That means that we are sensitive to more stimuli, external and internal. So just the very simple fact that I've got a few lights shining on me and that I've been talking with you animated for a bit has pulled down my electrolyte far more than you. I mean, you probably feel just the same as you did 30 minutes ago. I'm feeling a little, maybe just a little tingly or whatever. I don't know if you can see, maybe this eye is a smidge short, smaller than the other one. So that's called migraine eye, and that's actually a prodrome. If I had my salt in front of me right now, I would take a salt pill and some water, but I don't. I normally don't get this. I haven't had it in a long time. And for those of us that have this prodrome, it's the easiest one to tell. you look in a mirror and you're like, oh, my eye's smaller. Or a friend or a relative can say, your eye's smaller if you don't feel it. Over the course of being able to quiet down and settle everything down in my body since following protocol and not having anything, other factors in there, I can now feel I can feel it. It's a definitive, it just goes just like that. And I'll be like, prodrome. And that means there's a cortical spreading depression going on in my brain where my brain is running out of electrolyte. And it's the part of that is connected to my eye. And that is our early warning system saying, hey, if you don't address this, you're going to get a migraine, or it's going to start a path for a migraine. People that don't have a migraine eye can have a more difficult time because, like, some prodromes for people is yawning, excessive yawning. Another prodrome for people can be like excessive energy. So, like, you clean house the day before and you're like, oh, I feel great. And the next day you wake up with your migraine. You're like, what in the world? I felt so great yesterday. That's a prodrome. So, and the list of prodromes is so vast that they could be everyday events for normal people and for migraine people. So you won't even know that. It can take quieting down all of that noise for you to be able to tap in and actually know what your personal prodromes are. But you will have them. It's a definitive characteristic of migraine.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I really appreciate that. I remember Angela explaining to us the first time we interviewed her, how that brain was different. It is literally a differently wired brain. And she
Yes.
explained, like, if you think about it evolutionarily, if you had somebody who was more sensitive, who could see better at night, who could, feel things better inside and out, like you said, that would be very favorable. It's just the situation that we're in that works against that. This would have been
Yes.
great as we evolved, but in our current state, with all the stimulus that we have, all the lights that we have at an unnatural times, and the food
Mm-hmm.
we're eating are affecting people with migraine brain in a way that is not favorable anymore because of the environment.
Exactly. And you know what? You know what's really also kind of, this ties in a little bit with that, but kind of evolutionarily, like people, I'm going to tie it in a little bit, where people say, you need to eat your breakfast and skip your dinner, or, eat your meals in between this window and that window or whatever, and they're so dogmatic about it. But here's Angela, who is a night owl, and she doesn't go to bed till 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Right. And she's a migrainer. So she has the same migrainer characteristics that I do. I'm not an early to bed person. I'm like 9, 10 o'clock, but much earlier than her. And so this also, to me, just thinking about this makes sense, because it's like, you can't have all the people that can protect your tribe going to bed at the same time. So obviously we're in shifts. I'm the later shift, or the early morning shift, or the day shift. You know what I mean? And Angela would have been she was the first shift. So I think that's also interesting too. And both she and I don't like to eat until later in the day, till
Mm.
3 or 4 in the afternoon. And that may have something to do with the fact that we were more, the watch keepers, or for the first shifts or whatever.
Interesting. Okay. Well, you're both night owls in my world. That's way too late to stay up, both of you. So I'll take care of, like, as soon as Angela goes to bed, I'll wake up from there, and I'll
Oh my
take that
gosh.
shift.
You really wake up that early?
I'm usually up by like 4:35, just naturally awake. Yeah. But I also go to bed by like 8:39. So
Okay. All right. Well, that's
yeah.
good. You're getting your good sleep
Yeah,
in.
yeah, yeah, trying anyway. Yeah, okay, so that's very, very interesting. Tell us about your transition into a fully carnivorous diet. How did that kind of come into your consciousness, and when did you finally think, like, oh, I can do this with all animal products without anything else?
So the I was in the protocol group, and then a couple months later, maybe 8 or months, maybe, well, I guess it was about a year and a half after I joined the group, that Angela started the ketogenic group for migraineurs. She started the keto group, whatever. And so, of course, my curiosity, looking into that or whatever, and by the time that group was kind of already started, I had already phased out. Like, I really wasn't eating bread. I really wasn't eating the potatoes. It seemed that I was eating more, and I've never eaten a ketogenic diet, but it seemed like I was eating, I don't even know what you would even call it, a meat fat heavy keto diet, I guess, or so it was definitely fat heavy, and it was definitely meat heavy, but there was still some vegetable or fruits in there, I should say. So I was still eating a little bit of onion, garlic, avocado, tomatoes, that kind of thing, maybe some zucchini or something like that. Um, and then I think it was whenever I read I don't know, brain, one of the all those books, that came out in that area in that time frame. And I just remember reading, you don't ever need to eat a fruit and vegetable again in your life. Carbs are non-essential. And of course, at that time, I associated carbs with, you know, just plant foods. I know that animal foods have carbs as well. So I was like, well, carbs, that's plant foods. I'm like, and so I quit. I just stopped right then and never went back. And now, and I've been strict carnivore, and my carnivore diet includes all meats, all seaweed, seafood, eggs, mushrooms, and dairy. And spices as well. So it's a very broad carnivore diet, if for all intents and purposes. So I didn't feel like I was suffering. I've been very strict with that for maybe 2 or 3 years when I was trying to get rid of some things that I thought could be helped by that. It really didn't help. These were all things that, one of the few things that couldn't help with that. But I think eating that way did assist the healing quicker. I can definitely say that. Now, even though I do have some plant foods here and there, I still call myself a carnivore, and I just laugh at people that I'm like, you can tell me that I'm not a carnivore till the cows come home. I'm never going to believe you. I've been eating this way for so long now. I'm going to continue to eat this way my whole life. I'll call myself a carnivore. And if that not allows you to sleep at night, so be it. you know?
Yeah, I think it's ridiculous. I love the way hyper carnivore kind of describes a carnivore in nature, is like at least 70 to
Exactly.
75% of your calories are coming from animal products. I think all of us can agree that if you're in that ballpark, everybody can individualize. Some people can be a little bit more liberal and include more things. Other people have to be a little bit more on the strict side. Maybe they got some food addiction issues and just can't really mess with
Right.
some of that stuff, or some of the plant toxins accumulate for them the way that it does in other people. But I think all of us in this world can definitely call ourselves carnivores, even if other things sneak in here or there. Or
Yeah.
I get a little bugged when people are trying to nitpick certain things. The one time that like I posted a picture and there was a little bit of a green avocado and everyone was like, "Oh, that didn't come from a cow." Like, I know that didn't come from a cow. I'm sorry.
Right. I mean, and that's what I say to you. If you look at my diet, even over a 7-day period, 90% of my foods are carnivore. I mean, and if you look at my foods over a year, not maybe 95% of my foods are carnivore. So yes, I'm carnivore.
Yeah. Yep. I love it. Yeah, I love it. Okay, so you go on carnivore. We all know like the kind of typical stuff that improves for most people, but then there's also the list of like lots of surprising things you weren't expecting. What other things kind of improved in your own health? Maybe things that you didn't think you even had issues with until you went carnivore and some of the things dropped out. Like, is there a list of things that you weren't really expecting that got better on carnivore?
The first one, like for real, I didn't really think I had any. I mean, I knew let me think about this. I'm gonna have to think back long. You know what? I'm probably going to say that I was pretty bold to say that I didn't have any insulin issues. Boy, did I have some hypoglycemia. It was really humbling. You know what I mean? And working through that and healing that was very humbling. I mean, when you see your blood sugar going down to 55 and you're like,
Wow.
what in the world's going on here? Like I just ate. And so yeah, and now all that's behind me. And then also knowing why you felt like garbage so often after eating. You know what I mean? Like that wasn't you like you thinking you're fasting. No, you were hypoglycemic. You know what I mean? And I shouldn't say I wasn't fasting. Like I always thought I prided myself on, oh, I would skip breakfast or I could go this long without eating. And then, that's not healthy, especially when you're eating carbs, plant foods. You should be eating to fuel your body. So that, what else? I mean, my migraines went away. That was without carnivore. The hypoglycemia really, really was healed. I think that was the major one for me. Blood sugar issues. Really, I really can't. And obviously, when I became fat adapted, the energy level with, that is, I mean, I can't even speak to that. It feels like a drug, when you just the energy amount that you get from being fat adapted.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's so steady and consistent. Like, it's not peaky
Yeah.
the way if I have like black coffee or something, you kind of get that like jittery. So it's just that it's like a pure, steady energy. It's
Yep.
wonderful. What about your brain? It sounds like your depression had cleared up a while ago, but what improvements did you see in your mental health?
The retention And the desire, the retention of anything read, learned, and then the desire to, I mean, like I've done so much since, I mean, I've started creating recipes. I've written a book. I've started a health coaching business. You know, I mean, just the vivaciousness that I have for life now kind of matches the energy level that you feel, those ketones burning, you know, I mean, you can just, um, and I don't know this. I don't know if Angela, excuse me, talked about this in her interview, but I know that she and I have talked about this at a great deal. So when I'm burning glucose, and as a migrainer, we have amplified senses. So like I can hear things inside my body, and I know lots of people can. But when I'm burning glucose, I don't like the sound that that makes. It is the sound of crickets. There's a high pitched cricket noise that I can tune into or not. When I'm burning ketones, it's a cicada sound. So it's very calming. It's such a nice, it's very, very calming. So that's another impetus or motivation, as you will, to not really eat off track because it's just so serene and calm in my brain while also being energetic. It's not a down. I mean, it's a down and an up, I guess, you know? I can't
That's
really
fascinating.
explain it. It's really weird to say these things out loud. It's not really anything I've ever said before because I know it's kind of freaky, but migraineurs know. We just know. We can smell things from miles away. We can see things. We can hear things that you guys can't. And we have all thought that this is how all humans are until we've gotten in this group and realized what? Not everybody has that, you know? Or maybe you've learned early in life that, oh, don't say that because not everybody has that. You're going to be looked at like a freak, you know?
That's fascinating. I have never heard that described in that way. But again, I think Angela told us it's like 12 to 15% of people in America have the migraine brain. That's a lot of people out there.
It
So
is.
that's very,
Mm-hmm.
very interesting. Oh, that's amazing. Okay, so talking about your recipes, when did you start to want to become more creative with what you were doing as far as a carnivore diet?
That was when COVID hit, and that was the day that I wanted the chaff or whatever. And then when I found that soul bread recipe, and and like I said, it came out amazing. And I can't even remember. I think the next thing I made was like a pizza crust, and who doesn't want bread and pizza crust on a carnivore diet, and then from there, I think my next biggest thing is, and it's my most favorite treat of all, and I've named them carnivore crumbles. And all of these things, honestly, especially the bread and the carnivore crumbles, are things that when I found them, I was alone. I'm at my house alone. It was during COVID and stuff, and I'm not married. I'm single, whatever. So I'm home, and I do these things where it's like, how come this isn't, I'm looking online, I'm looking on social media to see who's got this, nobody has this recipe. I'm like, um, nobody has this soul bread recipe. This is crazy. And then when I came across the carnivore crumbles, and I didn't see that anywhere. Well, carnivore crumbles are browned butter milk solid. So when you brown butter and you get the brown bits in the bottom of the
Yeah,
pan,
yeah.
and that's what gives it the caramely flavor, right? Well, again, another deep dark web dive, web dive, and I came across a way to increase the yield of those. So with butter and non-fat milk powder, and you can get like 2 cups worth of brown buttermilk solids, and they're crunchy, they're crispy, they taste like graham cracker bits. So of course, and from there, I use them as cereal on top of carnivore ice cream. I make bars with them, cookies with them, cookie butter with them, and it's all carnivore. So again, very outside the box. You're not finding cookie butter with pork rinds or anything like that. Carnivore cookie butter. Um, and they're all added sweetener, grain, starch, flour, and seed oil free. So there's no grains or anything. There's no sweeteners. You can definitely add sweeteners to them. I just do not use them in my recipes.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes it really versatile too, because again, you're going to be cooking for lots of people who may or may not be eating the same way. So knowing that there's some versatility there, when you are
Mm-hmm.
serving some of the meals you make to people who are eating carbohydrates, do they tend to think that it's not sweet enough for them?
100%. Yes. Yes. I will say the carnivore crumbles, that was the one thing that pretty much universally everyone's like, I like these. They kind of are sweet because it's non-fat milk powder, which is a little sweet as it is. Well, I mean, I guess relative. Um, But yes, and so if I make something for them, usually what I do is I'll add like half the amount of, like, if I'm adding sweetener to it, I'll add half sugar. And usually that they're like, this is pretty good. It could use a little more sweetener. So of course I'm trying to, reduce those sugars, but that's not working out too great.
Yeah, so that's okay. We need steps in between, which again is why your
Yes.
work is so awesome. Okay, so tell us some of the, as you're looking at your cookbook in particular, tell us some of the most essential ingredients. What things would somebody need to make the most number of recipes in your cookbook?
So a big component would be milk protein powder, which is not milk powder. It's milk protein powder, which is a blend of casein and whey protein powders. And you can make your own using casein and whey protein powder. So you could, and then the other one I use is whey protein powder. So if you got casein protein powder and whey protein powder, you would then have the milk protein powder. Also ricotta cheese or farmer cheese, both kind of one and the same. And I do use non-fat milk powder because of the crumbles, butter, cream, milk. So lots of dairy in mine. The protocol is a high fat protocol. It's also moderate protein, whatever. So the emphasis is more on animal fat and animal protein. So that's where my recipes were driven for, was for more high fat. And dairy is obviously high fat, right? Compared to other things. I don't use any egg white protein powders. I've never worked with egg white protein powders. They are they actually affect insulin negatively since they are fat free. I'm trying to do things to help people heal their insulin. So mine are high fat.
That's
So,
perfect.
and people complain about that too, especially on protocol, because they are kind of high fat. But for the general layperson out in the, outside the protocol, they're great because they naturally fall within macros that people tend to naturally meet when they eat carnivore on their own.
Gotcha. Okay, interesting. Now, is there, I've never put these two things together, so it's an honest question. Is there a link between dairy tolerance and migraine brain? Like, is it disproportional the number of people who have migraine brain that can tolerate dairy like really, really well? Is that a thing?
I'm not sure if that's a thing. I think that there's just misinformation out in the general public that regarding dairy. That's what I think, because knowing what I know, we are very dairy loving in the migraine group. And I think I don't know exactly why that is, other than the fact that dairies taste so good. There is a big, huge dairy averse community, like out in the carnivore community. And so what I tell people is, because they think, it's going to make you gain weight, it's going to do this, and it's going to do that. One of the biggest things that I'm trying to teach people is weight is tied to insulin. It has nothing to do with dairy, or has nothing to do with the meat, has nothing to do with anything other than your insulin. And that is going to be dysregulated eating plant foods. Okay. So when you remove the plant foods, then you're down to foods that will not have an insulin impact in a negative way. You may gain weight, you may lose weight, you may yo-yo up and down. It may take you 2 years to lose the weight. You may lose the weight in 6 months and gain 10 pounds and then lose 30 pounds in 3 years. All of that is your body healing itself because it's your insulin. And the gatekeeper of all that is your thyroid. And the thyroid knows your body inside out. It's the regulator of your insulin, right? So if you once it knows that it has a steady supply of nutrients coming in, it will increase your metabolism, and your body will get to its preferred weight when it's ready. So it's not dairy. It can't be dairy. If it was dairy, I'd be fat as a house right now. I would, and so would everybody else. You know what I mean? So that's why I don't understand why. How can you sit there and say it's dairy when I eat more dairy than you and I'm not fat? It's not dairy, it's your insulin. And once your insulin is stable, you will come to your body will come to its preferred weight. So I say enjoy all the foods on a carnivore diet, because your body will eventually heal itself at the rate that it's going to heal itself. You can't trick your body. You can't jumpstart it into doing something it's not going to do on its own. And you also cannot direct your body to heal what you want it to heal first. It will heal what it needs to heal. And if you're not losing the weight, that means there's something more dire and important that needs to be healed underlying.
Yeah,
That's what I
I
feel.
love that. I love that. That is very well explained. I really appreciate that.
Thank
As we're
you.
shifting from talking about the recipe themselves to the execution of the recipes, what are the
Mhm.
things that are essential as far as equipment in the kitchen? What do people need to be thinking of when they're thinking like, how am I going to set up my kitchen to do this? And what kind of skills are required for somebody to execute most of the recipes um, in the cookbook?
First and foremost, don't throw away any of your kitchen gadgets. Don't think you're not going to use them because I threw away so many and I have bought them again. So don't think they're off the table. Save them. Number one. Number two, I did not get a oh, what is that really nice blender? KitchenAid. I did not get a KitchenAid blender until 2 years ago. 7 years into my carnivore journey. And that's because I got so tired of using my handheld mixer that I got the one that can mix itself. So you don't need that necessarily, but that's a really nice upgrade if you don't have it. So a blender, a handheld little frother, some silicone molds, and really that's it. I mean, things I think you probably already have in your kitchen. No real skill needed at all. Like I said, I was not a baker. The nice thing about working with not working with gluten and working with the dairy products is it's not finicky. There's no rise time. You dump, pour, stir, mix, put it in the oven and go, and that's it. So there's no prepping, there's no curing, there's no nothing. I have my 3-year-old granddaughter helping me make these things. If she can do it, you can do it. I've got my YouTube channel that I've started because I had so many people wanting to see how to make them. So now I walk you through them if you're afraid and not knowing how. I also have them written down so you don't even have to watch the videos. You can hire me and I'll do a cooking demo with you. I mean, there's all sorts of ways. Do not be intimidated cooking anything that I have to make at all. Nothing is difficult and you can't really mess up.
I love that. That's amazing. I was going to ask you, what is the part of your book you're the most proud of? Is it that last statement that you created something that is so easy that a lot of people without that kind of background or skills, they can still use the cookbook to their advantage?
I think so. I think that and just knowing that these foods and I actually used to call them carnivore junk foods until someone said you really shouldn't call them that. And I thought, well, but they are, but then I'm glad that they talked me out of it. And I'm glad now in retrospect because the thought that knowing that these foods are on people's tables and they're enjoying them and they are these traditional kind of foods that we've loved for a long time but with a healthier twist that we can continue to eat that will just make us feel better and create better health really does. I'm going to cry. Bring me joy. It really does to know that I'm on your tables.
Uh, that's amazing. I don't think I can top that. I think that will close out our episode. That's amazing, Terry. You do such
Thank
wonderful
you.
work and you make things really accessible and simple for people, which I really love and appreciate. And the
Thanks for
more people we can welcome into this community without bashing people for having little treats or plant foods on the side is just, it's not necessary and it doesn't help anybody. So I love your approach to all of
inclusivity.
this. Yep. Yep.
Thank
I
you so,
love your
Casey.
Yeah, I love your approach and I love this conversation. Hopefully, after this, you can go grab a whole bunch of salt before it's too
Yeah,
late.
should have
But
gotten
in the
smaller
meantime,
for.
yep, exactly. In the meantime, where would you like people to go to find you and connect with you and your work?
Okay. I am on Instagram as Carni-Terri, YouTube as Carni-Terri, TikTok, I think, is Carni-Terri, and then I'm on Terry Haas on Facebook.
Excellent. We will link all of that in the show notes. We'll also link the link to your book. Is there a preferred place you'd want people to go to find your book?
I'm on Amazon and I also have a website, Terry's Test Kitchen.com.
Okay,
So either
excellent.
way.
We'll link all of that in the show notes, Terry. Thank you so very much for having this conversation. It's so interesting when I meet people in the community who look so vibrant and fit and have boundless amounts of energy, and like you never assume that they've gone through some type of a health challenge or a weight loss
Right.
challenge. And then you dig a little deeper and find out that we all have these interesting stories, and to only know the version of Terry that's thriving and kicking ass at 58, to be unaware, I had no idea you were suicidal and that depressed and all that stuff. So it's so cool to hear your story, and I'm so glad that you took the time out of your busy day to share it with us today. We really, really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the invite and allowing me to share my story with you all.
Of course, it was an honor to host you. And this has been another episode of Balanced Body Radio.